MacVoices is supported by ExpressVPN. Secure your surfing at expressvpn.com/MacVoices. Welcome back to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, as you know, one of the hottest topics going is home automation, whether you are doing it with Apple, whether you're doing it with Amazon, or whether you're doing it with Google. But this time we're going to focus on the one that I personally prefer, although I'm doing it with two. We're going to focus on the Apple home automation. That means we get to talk to Mr. Josh Centers, who has updated the Take Control of Apple Home Automation ebook to version 1.1. Josh, it's great to see you.
Hey, thanks for having me back, Chuck.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you back. So we're at 1.1 with this book. And so, the first thing everybody says is, well, what's new and what's exciting? So I guess we'll lead with that. What pushed this to version 1.1?
Well, unfortunately, it wasn't just a ton. There hasn't been a lot of movement in the space, but there was just enough to warrant an update. One change that happened with iOS 12 is that they did make some nice user interface tweaks, mostly making icons that made more sense. And so we switched those screenshots out. That was honestly for me the big thing. There are a few things new to the HomeKit world. One of those is, of course, the Home app for Mojave, which is what they apparently codenamed Marzipan, which is a way to bring iOS apps to the Mac. And Home is one of the first apps that Apple used this to bring over. The others, of course, being News and I think Stocks. They brought Stocks over, right? And so,
right.
You technically HomeKit is on the Mac now if you run Mojave. I still don't run Mojave on my main machine. There's also a very interesting thing that's happened is that Apple is starting to let third-party TV set makers, and third-party is kind of superfluous there since Apple doesn't make a TV set. Sorry, Gene Steinberg, or Gene Munster. I get my genes mixed up. Anyway, sorry, all genes. But they're letting TV set manufacturers include HomeKit now. And my understanding is, I don't think this is shipped just yet, although if not, it should be really close. But my understanding is that you'll be able to use certain TV set models as HomeKit hubs, which is interesting just that it's a thing. And, of course, another thing that happened, Elgato did sponsor this book, but now Elgato is no longer in the home automation business. It is they spun the Eve line off, and so we had to make some updates throughout on that. Kind of minor stuff. In the recent 6-color survey that Jason Snell does every year of all the Apple Illuminati, I guess, of which I guess I'm a part of. One of the things that was really consistent in the ratings was people talking about Apple hasn't done much with home automation, and it's just a real shame. This is an area that hasn't advanced a whole lot in the past year, unfortunately.
Okay, so I'm not sure I agree with you. I think there's a lot there to chew on a little bit. So let's chew on it.
Okay.
The inclusion in Mojave of the Home app, I think is kind of exciting because I don't know, if it feels like if that's either an experiment. If you look at it that way, if it's an experiment to move it over, then it's an experiment. But it feels like this opens things up a little bit more potentially. And I don't even know why I say that, but just it feels like it's going to be taken a little more seriously if it's on the Mac as opposed to just on your iPhone. And I'm sure there are people that might disagree with that. In fact, they might even see it the other way around. But the fact that I can now sit down at my Mac and do things, even if it's just some of the manual controls, even if I don't have to be using Siri to control, I just feel like that just improves the experience, at least for me. But of course, I do spend a lot of time in front of my Mac.
Sure. It's a good thing to have, and it's something that I lobbied for. And by lobbied, I mean complained about on Twitter a lot until it happened. And my problem with it is that, and this is true with all the so-called Marzipan apps, at least at this point, is that they feel really half-baked. Just as an example, the Home app on Mojave, you cannot set up new accessories, and you still have to have an iOS device for that. So it's not a full-featured app, unfortunately. I mean, granted, I do think it's good, but also all these Marzipan apps, at least at this point, don't feel like they fit in with the rest of the system. And I don't have the design knowledge really to explain why not, but they don't quite look right. Even like the news app to me is especially jarring. Like the fonts are just a little bit different than the rest of the Mac. Things are just, I don't know, it feels kind of alien. I'm hoping now, of course, Apple has now announced dates for WWDC. And I'm sure we're going to hear a lot more about this technology at that coming keynote. So I'm hoping they're working out some of the kinks. And I realize this is probably a case where you see so often these days where a company has to kind of release a half-baked product as a final sort of round of testing before they can really perfect it. So I'm hoping that's really the case and they don't just kind of leave it in this weird embryonic state that it's in.
No, I would agree with you on that, but I think the fact that they have done it is a good indication. And one thing we could debate, and I think is beyond the scope of this interview, is are they trying to bring the two operating systems together? I don't know if that's an indication of that, but I think it is an indication that we may see certain things that can indeed go cross-platform. That doesn't mean it has to be implemented exactly the same way on both platforms. But just the fact that it's there, I think, speaks a lot, maybe to the folks who say Apple is not giving enough love to the Mac. Okay, well, here's some love. It may not be perfect, and it may be a bit forward-thinking and future-looking, but it is there.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. It is forward-thinking. In the long term, Marzipan, I think, says good things about the Mac's future, or at the very least about if there's something coming to replace the Mac, it says good things about that. It's interesting how they're going about this because Microsoft has been trying for years to have one operating system for everything. And of course, they've now given up on the phone space entirely, at least for now. But they very much have tried to turn Windows into a combination tablet and PC operating system and even a game console operating system. Apple's taking a very different tact with it. They want to make multiple operating systems, but they want to have it so. I think the dream is to go into Xcode, make an iOS app or make a Mac app, and then you can press a button and spit out a watchOS app or spit out a Mac app, iOS app, or heck, at some point maybe even a web app. I don't know. So it's a very interesting counter to, it seems like, at least in the desktop, where we're going is, it seems like it's web development on the desktop, especially with Electron. And really when we talk about web development, we're talking about WebKit, right? Because Electron's built on WebKit. Microsoft's new browser is going to be WebKit. Everything's going to be WebKit, basically, or some variant of it. And then so Apple is really fighting hard to maintain some sort of native apps across all platforms. So I think, if nothing else, that's something to appreciate because, all of us in the Apple community complain about the Electron apps and how many resources they take up, how inefficient they are. So even if, and I think a lot of people are seeing Marzipan as a replacement for quality Mac apps like BB Edit and Text Expander, some of these quality Mac apps. But hey, here's the thing. There's not that many of those apps. There's a lot of Mac apps. There's not a lot that are really great. And there's a lot of iOS developers that find the Mac intimidating to develop for. And so if you can bridge that gap, I think it will, in the long run, make the Mac a better platform, if a bit messier. And the alternative to that is web apps. It's not like, these people are suddenly going to start making native Mac apps. No, they'll just turn their app into a web app, or they won't make a Mac app. That's the reality, unfortunately.
Well, the reality is, as you say, there's certain financial realities too, and it takes time to develop two apps versus one app. even if you add another, so much percentage development time onto that one app, if it can run on both platforms, both hardware platforms, why, my God, why wouldn't you? And hopefully the appearance situation may get a little bit better. Here we go again, Josh. It's funny. We all make our judgments just like on, okay, today is it. And, nothing will ever change. And so this is going to be mediocre forever. And it never is. It evolves. It may evolve in a positive direction or a negative direction. But I'd like to think that with the quality of app developers that Apple has out there in its audience and the quality of their hardware, that the developers are going to see it, that it's worth putting the time into.
Yeah, and well, it's sort of like I was talking to somebody the other day about the folding screens that we're seeing now. These phones that fold into tablets. I don't want to throw the show totally off rails here, but a lot of people are like, oh, that's crap. No one's going to buy that. I'm like, well, no, not when it's $2,000 and looks like a big hunk of plastic. But have a little vision. Understand that these products improve over time.
Yeah, they improve over time, and I mean, we had a discussion about that at some point here on the show. Okay, how much does the seam show, and how much is that edge going to wear? I mean, you can be a naysayer on a lot of it, but until somebody gets it out and does it right, and Apple has a better chance of doing it in their first iteration. But even if they don't, somebody in the second and third iteration are potentially going to make it better, or they may be problems that are just not solvable. Who knows? But you won't know until you get it out there and see what people's reaction is.
Yeah, right.
So the second thing you mentioned, and this one I find really intriguing, AirPlay 2 HomeKit on the TV sets.
Mm-hmm.
This to me feels like finally we're going to get the voice control potentially of some of our TV sets like we've wanted to since we were kids.
Yeah. Well, to me, what's interesting about there's a lot of things I'm still trying to kind of work out, and I guess we'll know more after the March 25th Apple event that's supposed to be where they have the TV service. But it's really interesting that they're opening up Apple TV to third-party companies at this point, because it's sort of the opposite of what Apple usually does, right? Like Apple might partner with somebody initially just to get things going. Famous example being the Motorola Rocker, and they partnered with Motorola to try out a phone. Of course, that was a disaster, and so they, and then they eventually move on to the iPhone. They partnered, they had this clone program that didn't really work so well. Apple typically doesn't like take an established product and then hand it off to other people like that. So it says a lot of interesting things, especially the fact that they're opening HomeKit up a little bit in that. And I think they're going to have to, because I see HomeKit as sort of at a competitive disadvantage at this point. I still think, I'll affirm this all day and night that HomeKit is the best overall ecosystem solution for home automation. The other real competition for most people is Google, which has improved a lot. The Google Home experience has improved a lot in the past year in terms of home automation, but it's still kind of rough. It's not nearly as well thought out as Home and HomeKit are. And of course, I don't want to wake the thing up, but the Amazon voice activated solution. And by the way, you're talking about how you have some devices that you use with HomeKit and something else. One of the things I suggest in the book, and I suggest it, I'll suggest it here too, is when you're shopping for home automation products, to invest in home automation devices that have wide ecosystem support. And the more the better. Like, a great example is the Philips Hue. The Philips Hue is like a platform of its own, but it supports HomeKit, It supports Alexa. It supports Google. It has its own thing going on too. You have the Philips Hue app you can use, and there's things that can plug into that. And so it's super versatile. You have the Wemo Mini, which and that's one big thing that happened in the past year. Apple opened it up so that it used to be hardware makers had to include a special chip from the factory for HomeKit to be supported, and Apple loosened that up a little bit. And so now the Wemo Mini, which did not ship with HomeKit support, has added HomeKit support. I don't think they've added it to any of the other Wemos, which is kind of odd. And I actually, off the top of my head, don't know of another product that's added that software support. So I don't know what the deal is there. But I will say the Wemo Mini, not without its flaws, but once you get it set up, it works in HomeKit. It works with the Amazon voice-based solution, and it works with Google Home. So if you're more cross-platform, that's definitely a way to go, because you want to think about the future. You may not always want an iPhone. You might buy an Amazon Echo, and you really want those things to work interoperably as much as possible. I have a lot of HomeKit only stuff, and I as someone who has Google Homes and Amazon Echoes and all that, and even some Android devices, it can be kind of frustrating at times not to be able to control those devices with unless I use an Apple device.
I agree with everything you just said. The only caveat in there, at least for me, is that, and we've said it a million times, and I'm sorry for repeating it, folks, but Apple does have the edge, a big edge on the privacy thing. So if that is a major concern of yours, then you really do need to standardize on the HomeKit and Siri, and as opposed to the broader devices. And you can kind of do that, I guess, if you're buying things and you don't buy one of the Google Homes or the Amazon devices, because then you only use Siri. But it is a concern, and it is a consideration.
Yeah, that for sure, and that's one of the big advantages of HomeKit is that Apple is the one company involved in this space that actually seems to care about anyone's privacy. Not that that's a sure thing. I don't want to give anyone any false ideas about things. One thing, so just to explain something here. So one of the things with some of these devices, one advantage if you buy something that's HomeKit only is that typically you have to go through the Home app to set it up. So there's some of these things, how do I phrase this so it makes sense to regular people? So like the Philips Hue. Well, when you set up Philips Hue, you open the Hue app and you set it up through Philips Hue, and then from the Philips Hue app, you can set it up with HomeKit. Now, ostensibly, if you don't have an account with Philips Hue, they're not sending your information anywhere, but they could be anyway, right? So that's something for real to be concerned about. Meanwhile, I have a Sylvania light bulb back here. It doesn't really work right. I don't recommend it, but it's HomeKit only, and so when I set it up, I set it up through the Home app. I didn't set it up through I didn't have to set it up through a third-party app and then set it up through HomeKit. It's purely through Apple stuff the whole time, right? So if you set up a device that's like that, then you can be pretty confident about it. But if you set up through a third-party app and then you set up the HomeKit, or sometimes you can set up with HomeKit and then set up with a third-party app. That third-party app might be, who knows what they do with data anymore? So many crazy things have come out now, especially with Facebook gathering all kinds of app data they're not supposed to actually have on the back end. So, like another one, like the Echo Bee, it's my smart thermostat, and that's an example of it's HomeKit, but I had to set it up on the device first, and then I have to go through a menu on the device itself to actually get the HomeKit set up. So, just be aware there are some things like that where even if you just want to use it with HomeKit, you have to set it up with some other way first.
Right.
MacVoices is supported by ExpressVPN. That makes me very happy. because privacy and security seem to come up in every single edition of MacVoices. Using a VPN is one of the easier ways to improve your odds against the bad guys, no matter where you are. That's because everyone wants to know what you're doing online. Social media sites, professional marketing firms, even your own internet service provider. They all have their reasons, which usually involve selling you something. And then there are the less ethical operations out there who want to sell your private information to even less ethical operations. With ExpressVPN, you can prevent that. Their simple-to-use iOS app can connect automatically, so you don't have to remember to set it up. Their powerful Mac OS app takes the same simple-to-use approach, but also includes sophisticated features, such as managing your connections on a per-app basis. ExpressVPN is the VPN I'm using now, and I've seen no slowdown in speed and no interference of any kind while I'm surfing from home, the office, or any local restaurant. You can have that same great, safe experience. Visit expressvpn.com/MacVoices right now and find out how you can get 3 free months with a 1-year subscription. Don't put it off and wait until you get hacked. Then it's too late. expressvpn.com/MacVoices and take back your internet privacy. Thanks to ExpressVPN for their support of MacVoices.
I thought when you were talking about the thermostat, I thought sure you were going for the microphone in the the Nest thermostats,
Right.
that they just somehow forgot to mention to customers that there was a microphone in there.
Yeah, that's a little creepy.
Yeah, how could that
happen? Now, all credit to Ecobee. Or Ecobee. There is a microphone in there, but they tell you up front because it's the excuse they have is it has Alexa built into it. Though, I mean, other than the novelty of playing music through your thermostat, is kind of useless. But I'm sure they're totally not doing anything suspicious with that microphone at all.
Well, but I respect the fact that at least they told you about it. I mean, that's
kind of hard to hide.
Well, you would think so, but it took everybody this long to find it.
Right.
You mentioned that the new TVs are going to be HomeKit Hubs.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so talk just for a second about the difference between a HomeKit Hub and just a HomeKit device.
Okay, so excuse me. Actually, let me pull this up in the book, which I probably should have already done, right? So I can tell you exactly what I wrote. Okay, so the partners on this are LG, Sony, and Vizio. They will support AirPlay 2 and HomeKit, and that's supposed to be happening right about now. Okay, so I'm sorry. They're not hubs. They are what you build. Well, I think hub may be another thing they can do, but I'll explain the hub in a second. Apparently, what you can do is you can turn those TVs on and off and change your inputs with HomeKit. So that's potentially promising. So anyway, what a HomeKit Hub is, and right now there are 3 devices I know of that can act as a HomeKit Hub. A HomeKit Hub can be an Apple TV, a HomePod, or an iPad. The iPad, there's a switch you have to turn on for it, and what the hub does, the main thing it enables, 2 things it enables are it lets you control your HomeKit devices while you're away from home. It acts like a router almost between your Wi-Fi network and the rest of the world, and it also enables automations and to make things extra confusing. So we're talking about home automation in general, but then there's a class of home automation called an automation, because Apple keeps using the same common words for stuff, where you can say like at 5 p.m. turn my lights on, something like that. That's really all that is. It's like a macro, and you cannot use those unless you have some kind of HomeKit hub. So that's really the advantage of a hub. And I think most people who are deeply invested in the Apple ecosystem are going to have one of those things. Now I always have to tell this story because it's hilarious and it's a real thing that's happened. I had a fella email me and say, yeah, Josh, every time I leave my house, I can't control my stuff. Like my wife can control stuff when I'm home, but if I leave the house, I can't control my lights. My automations don't work. I was like, okay, like what are you using for a hub? Oh, I'm using my iPad. Okay. Do you take your iPad with you? Yeah, I take it everywhere I go. I'm like, okay. See, the problem was, okay, so the iPad is, in this case, the iPad, the Apple TV, or the HomePod is basically acting as the device that's controlling stuff, right? You're triggering it remotely, and then sending a Bluetooth or a Wi-Fi signal in your house to control this stuff. So when he was taking his iPad with him, he was taking his hub with him, and then the hub can communicate with that stuff. So, it's, just one of those things. So if you use your iPad as a hub, don't take it with you.
Yeah, probably a good idea to just go ahead and get the Apple TV and set it up as your hub, and because it's not likely to move around too much.
Yeah, and you can also set up multiple devices as hubs. So if you have a couple of Apple TVs like I do, you can set them up as hubs, and you can also set an iPad up as a hub, and just one will stay active at a time. And the nice thing about that is every now and then the hub functionality might flake out on one, but it'll work on another one. So, always good to have a backup. Always good to have a spare.
Mm-hmm. The third thing we wanted to talk about was the Elgato Eve situation, which I think was very interesting. I talked to Lars at CES, and we talked a little bit about this. But I love this idea that Eve is now a dedicated home automation company, and they are dedicated only to HomeKit and Siri. They are not, so they sort of violate the advice you gave a minute ago, but they're a perfect company to standardize on if you really are going to focus just on Siri, and you do have those privacy concerns.
Right. And I love a lot of their products. Of course, they sent me a bunch of them for free when I was working on the book, but I already had a few anyway, like the Eve Energy, the Eve Room, stuff like that. I really love the Eve Room because it has all sorts of interesting sensors in it. You can use to trigger automations like it keeps track of humidity, it keeps track of temperature inside your house. So that's a nice one to have. And there's not really enough HomeKit manufacturers in the market making sensors. So I feel like that's something that's kind of neglected. So it's nice that somebody's out there doing that stuff. Yeah, I really like their products. Elgato and Eve split, and it really makes sense because Eve was always kind of its own thing. They had their own typeface and branding and all that. So, I guess it made sense for them. I don't really know I'm not privy to the internal business reasons why they did that, but I hope it's working out for them. Yeah,
I agree. But it also means that they're a bit more probably masters of their own fate. You don't have to worry about is the R&D money getting sent over to the gaming side, or
right.
Fighting for it. This is what you're going to do, and that's just the way the world is going now, is specialization. So
yeah, no, it makes total sense.
Josh, you mentioned that you have all the devices. But it sounded like you were endorsing HomeKit the most. What do you find you use the most? Is it HomeKit, or do you just use all of them interchangeably?
Are you talking about like the ecosystems like Amazon and Google and all that? Or
yeah.
I largely use HomeKit, and that's because it's the most reliable. I have Google Homes all throughout my house. I have a few Alexa devices at this point. Oh, darn, I said it, didn't I? Anyway, I have a number of the Amazon devices around my house. And, I really do use all of them on a daily basis. But one of the things I like about HomeKit in particular is that I can pull it up from my lock screen and have my grid of devices there and turn my lights on and off. And Google in particular seems kind of flaky on this front. Like there's two of my Hue bulb equipped lamps that I can tell it to turn all the lights off, and it turns all the lights off except for those two. It does nothing to those two. And they're set up in the Philips Hue app. They work fine in HomeKit. they work fine with Amazon. So I don't know what the deal is, and I don't really have time to figure it out. It's I don't care that much, honestly. And who has time to fix this stuff? So HomeKit really is, so of course, if you're in the Apple ecosystem, it's the one I recommend. But now I will say, I do have a Hue bulb in my bedroom attached to a lamp, and I have, I took advantage of an Amazon pricing error, and I got an Amazon, was it the Spot, like whichever one has a little weird round screen in it. I got one of those for free, and so I keep it by my bed so Jeff Bezos can hear me snore. And if I can walk in my bedroom at night, I can tell it to turn on that light, and it turns it on. And then if I'm laying there and my son or my wife's in the bed sleeping, and Alexa is always super loud, even with that whisper mode that doesn't even work half the time. So while I'm putting my phone away, I can swipe down and turn it off with the button. So they all actually work together pretty well.
Okay. I've not, still can't quite get comfortable with a Google microphone in my house. I've got the Amazon devices. I've got obviously the HomeKit devices, but I'm kind of glad to hear you say what you did about HomeKit, because that's the way I found it. The Amazon device can be, I'll give her 80 to 85%, but HomeKit, 90, 96, 97 for me. As far as, when I say something, once in a while she might not hear me exactly, but if I say something, usually it happens, and not quite as much with Amazon.
Yeah, I don't have a HomePod, but just with the iPhone, I've noticed, like, this is something Apple's actually polished really well. Like with Amazon or Google, I have to be kind of blunt about things. Well, and see, this is one of the advantages of HomeKit too. In HomeKit, you can set up rooms, and you can set up, you can pair, you can merge devices together. So if you have, and that's a really brilliant feature. So if you have two smart bulbs and a single light fixture, you can treat them as one device. And why no one else does this, I'm not quite sure. There may be a way to do it in Alexa now. I don't know, but darn, maybe a way to do this in Amazon now, but I don't know. And Siri, it's amazing. You can tell it to turn a room blue or turn a room green, and you can say, hey, adjust this to 50%, adjust this to 70%, and it just does it. And this is one of the cases where Siri really shines. And I've been consistently impressed, because I've always had, maybe it's my thick Southern accent, I don't know, but I've always had a really difficult time getting Siri to understand what I want. And I've even watched it, like I've watched it on the screen, like I will tell it something and it will interpret it correctly and then change it to the wrong thing. That's absolutely infuriating, but possibly another show. But now, when it comes to HomeKit, I can tell all these random things to do, like set this goofy scene, turn this pink, turn the temperature down to 60 degrees, whatever, and it does it right every single time. So that's something Apple has really put a lot of polish into.
Yeah, and I think one of the fun things that we should tell people, and you can Google it, folks. If I can find it easily, I'll put it in the show notes. But you don't just have to say red, blue, green, pink. There's a whole range of color descriptions that you can use. Now, exactly how subtle those are and how much your eye can perceive them is maybe another matter, and that's going to depend on you. But you can say some pretty strange color names, and something happens. It's whether it's exactly the color you think it is, but it will try to address it. So, yeah, fun stuff.
Yeah.
So this is 1.1, which means that owners of the book, the 1.0 version, get this version for free. Is that correct?
Yes, it is a free update.
Okay. And let's see, the pricing. I'll look up the pricing for you.
I'm pretty sure it's $14.99. Now, I will mention that there is a deal right now. I don't remember exactly what the deal is, but if you get Shally McFarlane's Siri book, there is a bundle I believe that's still being offered. There's a bundle where you can get the Siri book and the home automation book. Yes, you can buy both of them together for $20. And so they both usually cost $14.99. So that's a really good deal. And then you get her excellent book on Siri and all the things you can do with it. And then you get the home automation book. Because, something I've noticed, this is one of those books that whenever we have a sale, like the sales just like go through the roof, like in a ridiculous way. I think it's one of those things that people are curious about. They don't quite want to invest a lot of money in the book. It's like, I'm curious about that, but I don't want to spend a lot on it. So, check out this bundle. Every Apple geek needs to know about Siri and how to take advantage of that. And then while you're at it, for an extra $5, you get the home automation book, and it's kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah, we talked to Shali a few shows ago about that book, and so these two would indeed make a dynamic duo, no question about it. Because she does a great job with the Siri book, and obviously you tell us how to get more out of the home automation. So, why you would not be playing with this stuff right now when so much of it is built in, and you can go out and the Philips Hue bulbs are a little more expensive, but they're also pretty high quality. But there are also a lot of other options for a lot of devices, even just the simple. What did you say, Josh? The Wemo switches, just a simple on-off switch. If you don't need all the fancy colors or the dimming and everything, just turn your lights on and off.
Right.
There are a few luxuries in life better than being able to lay in bed and be half asleep and say, "Hey, whoever, turn the bedroom lights off," and not have to reach up and try to do that and half fall out of bed.
My personal favorite is being able to adjust the thermostat while I'm in bed, especially since the thermostat's on the ground floor and the bedrooms are upstairs. My personal recommendation, because this is something I hear all the time, people are like, I can't afford home automation. You probably can, if you have all this other Apple stuff, you probably can, because like you said, get the Wemo Mini. They usually cost about $30. They're sometimes sold in bundles for a lot cheaper. Like I got 2 of them for $40 on a Black Friday-ish Amazon deal. So just keep your eyes peeled. They're very inexpensive and they're super versatile. Yeah, you can control a lamp with them, but you can control any kind of dumb device that has a hardwired switch. So like a heater, like that you just turn on and then plug it in and it'll turn on, and you unplug it and it turns off. Or like a fan, like a box fan, or like a fan, oscillating fan, or anything like that. You can control a heater, a fan, anything like that. I mean, heck, maybe a electric kettle. I don't know. There's a lot of uses for it. I did a mug presentation once where they brought in like a lamp and they brought in a fan and all this stuff. And I was going around the room showing them how to control this stuff with one simple smart outlet. So, if you just want to dip your toe in a little bit, that's a really great way to start, and it's low risk, and I guarantee you're going to find some kind of use for it. Yeah,
and it's a slippery slope, because once you find one use for it, you're going to find a lot of uses for it. And I just think it is the future at some level. I mean, I'm not sure that we're ever going to be walking around talking to everything, but at least in the short term, there are plenty of things you can talk to and it can become very, very useful in your life. So,
you don't have to do your whole house too. That's another common misconception. This is one of the things I address in the book. I've been trying to talk Adam Inks into buying Hue bulbs for years. It's like, I got too many light bulbs. I'm like, you don't need all the light bulbs. When you really pay attention, you don't really use that many light bulbs in your house, probably. It's probably just a handful that you really use consistently. And so you can just replace a few. And if you want to spend the money, I highly recommend the Philips Hue, because they're a lot of fun. Everyone I've ever talked into buying them, they grumble and then they buy them. Like, oh, wait, this is amazing. Why didn't you tell me to buy this? I'm like, I spent years telling you to buy them.
Well, and two, the other thing to remember about the Hue is that the Philips Hue is that you don't have to buy the color versions. You can just buy simple white bulbs that go on and off, or you can buy the other ones that are white but they're dimmable, and you can control the temperature, so you can get a warm white as opposed to a harsh blue white. I mean, and those are significantly less expensive. So but I hate to say it, you should get at least one color bulb just to play with, because it is fun, and then decide whether it's worth investing the money to make everything or a whole room, with that. But the white ones, I mean, hey, there are white bulbs in your lamps now, so there you go.
The starter set I always recommend for people curious about Philips Hue. Go ahead and buy the one. There's a hub and I think 3 colored bulbs, because if you add up how much they all cost separately, it's a really good deal. And you can usually find a deal on that. I think it usually retails for $200, but I've seen them as low as $100. I'd probably wait for a sale on it. Personally, I got mine for $150, and you really get a good sense of it with that. And like my office doesn't need colored lights. But some other rooms might, like if you have a home theater, then color bulbs are great in there. Maybe in the bedroom, what I'm saying. There's different rooms where they can be a lot of fun. And there's also an app you can get for your iPhone that hooks up to Philips Hue. It's called Light DJ, and it works with the colored bulbs. I mean, it can work with the white bulbs too, but it's not nearly as fun. And it'll change colors and flash in time with the music. Just a really cool app. So yeah, you definitely want to, at least if you get Hue, you're kind of selling yourself short if you don't get at least a few color bulbs to try it out.
Yeah, agreed. So if you're going to do it, folks, you want to listen to Josh. You want to take control of Apple Home Automation version 1.1 and go crazy and let us know what you've done, because that's always a fun thing too. If you share some of your experiences, we learn a little bit. Maybe we even get some ideas for things that we'll want to do too. Josh, thank you. It's always great to talk to you, and always this is always a fun topic. I get enthused every time I talk about it. It makes me want to go and hook up more things.
All right, thanks for having me, Chuck.
We'll do it again. Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is MacVoices. What are you going to automate tonight? Until the next time, and as always, thanks for watching.
Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our MacVoices Facebook group and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices magazine, free on Flipboard. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us at patreon.com/MacVoices and join these folks who help keep MacVoices coming to you. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.